Watch Who?
Hello, and welcome to To Watch Who, a Doctor Who podcast. I'm Mark.
And I'm Sarah.
And I'm a Doctor Who fan.
And I'm new to watching Who.
Yeah, watching for the very first time.
Very first time.
There it is, as usual. And you join us today. We're in this deserted plant museum, apparently. It's really cold, isn't it?
Sure.
I'm glad to see you've got your winter furs on.
As opposed to my summer though.
There's a glacier outside and it's very cold. I've got my plastic space thermals on. How are you feeling?
Fine. It's just... God, I hate these intros.
And we've got a special guest today, which we're going to get... who we're going to get in touch with. Victoria's left her communicator bracelet on the floor, handily enough, so we're going to get in touch. If I can just work out how to use this thing. I think it's like an Apple Watch. So, Will, are you there?
Hello, coming in loud and clear, yeah.
Hello, welcome. Where are you in the computer room?
Yes, yeah. The spare bedroom that as the computer room.
Absolutely.
So, welcome to To Watch Who. This is very special because you are our first guest who's never seen Doctor Who before.
I'm honoured.
So we're going from sort of Sarah's side of things rather than the fan side of things this time. So, Will, what do you know about Doctor Who?
Not much really. So I'm obviously aware of it because I'm into television shows and I've seen lots of. I've not been living under a rock. I've seen TV in my time on Earth. I'm familiar with it. I can obviously name the new Who, such as Jodie Whittaker and David Tennant and Christopher. I remember Christopher Eccleston when it came back, and I was at that age where I was probably in the prime target audience for it, but then I missed it. And then obviously, aside from that, knowing Tom Baker and kind of classic Doctor Who and knowing what the TARDIS is and the concept of the TARDIS and a Dalek and maybe the Cyberman, but never sat down to watch an episode or anything like just knowing it was something that made my parents hide behind the sofa.
A classic, yeah.
Absolute cliche opinion of Doctor Who without seeing it really. So, intrigued. Right. Intrigued, but never actually going near it. Yeah,
right. And we've made you watch a '60s story as well, a classic story for the first time.
I mean, that wasn't too far away from my comfort zone. Because when I was a youngster, kind of 4 or 5, I can clearly remember them rerunning Batman, Adam West '60s Batman. It's like, who is your Batman, isn't it? You associate with one, and that was my first taste of Batman. Was Adam West and Burt Young, all of that, and then likewise knowing Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet and it's classic '60s shows. I mean, I know we spoke previously. It was you get spoilt with Dad's Army repeats, and so there's vintage TV readily available for people to digest. But obviously classic Who isn't, until BritBox has come along, hasn't been readily available the same as other shows.
No.
So it wasn't too much of a challenge in terms of sort of a black and white, half missing as well, of all the ones we chose for you.
Well, hang on, Mark chose for you. I said to Mark, which one shall we do? So this is Mark's doing. I can't even speculate. I have no idea what's coming up, so... that Mark chose for you.
It wasn't too far out of my comfort zone. I mean, I did film at A-level. I'm very used to watching old films. I go out my way sometimes to try and find stuff. And just because something is black and white, I mean, I think there's people out there who go, oh, it's black and white, it's crap. And just to say it straight. And it's like, no, come on, how many films did Hitchcock make in black and white? There's good stuff and, very influential scenes, and not just Hollywood films, but across the globe, world cinema and TV, and it all goes back to, the stuff people are influenced doing now. It all goes back to what they saw. Black Mirror, Charlie Brooker is all what he saw growing up in the 70s and classic TV. So,
and of course, I mean, Doctor Who, it obviously had to be good enough for it to still be around today. I mean, it can't have been that bad in the 60s.
Well, it's interesting because now it's on BritBox. You've got all maybe the younger generation that watch the new series, and it's so funny, with Doctor Who fandom on Twitter and things, you've got much sort of 17, 18-year-olds who you wouldn't think would watch something from the 60s, discovering these stories and the characters as well, even, moments in Doctor Who, like ones we've done, like The Rescue or something like that, where they're like, oh, Vicky's been, you've got sort of these teenagers watching and reliving those moments which were only designed to be shown once and never again. So it's great that it's still going.
It is interesting, isn't it? I mean, I don't want to do a really crap metaphor here, but when you discover something, you can review it contemporary. When we're looking back, I think we're so used to having music albums, from the past and what it means to your parents or your aunties and uncles or whoever who introduce you and go, you've got to listen, take just the Beatles. You've got to listen to the Beatles. Now 1967 from the Ice Warriors, the Beatles were doing Sgt. Pepper. And you listen to it now, and it still stands up. There's bits of it you might go, oh, but you can see where it goes with other bands and other influences and that kind of thing. So to do it with TV, I think it's a really clever idea.
Well, the Beatles actually we had a Beatles moment, didn't we, Doctor Who?
Yeah, they did appear in a First Doctor story. Well, it was a clip from Top of the Pops, so they were actually supposed to appear in person, but their manager wouldn't let them. And then they used a clip in Top of the Pops, but in the American, on BritBox, it's been cut out because of the rights issues for the Beatles. So Sarah's watching on BritBox, and it's on the DVD, but they've cut that scene out for overseas. They, for whatever reason, obviously the Beatles' rights are
I consider myself. I'm going to have to reevaluate myself. You're making me ask some big personal questions because I always thought, a bit of a Beatles head. I like George Harrison. He was always my favourite. And now you've educated me. So every day's a school day.
So they were supposed to appear in person in the future and be done up really old, but their manager didn't want them looking old. So that's why he said they weren't allowed to be in it.
Wow. Can you imagine that? What would you need to try and get Paul McCartney on the podcast now? That'd be brilliant, wouldn't it? Because he is really old.
So the Ice Warriors, our story this week. So Will, how did you watch these 6 episodes? Did you have a break in between each one, or because Sarah doesn't watch 6 in a row?
No,
we always have to have a break.
We did it in 3 and 3.
That's pretty extreme, isn't it? Doing 6 on the trot, you've got to be a bit into it to do that. I mean, I understand people doing it. I remember I once tried to watch 6 episodes of Peep Show and it just freaked me out. I couldn't hack it. I had to go and hide for a week. We looked at it. This is me and my better half, Emma, and I said, "Look, we're going to do this, and we'll do it as 3 lots of 2." So we did 2, and not on consecutive nights either. We had a break between each.
Well, because it was designed to be shown 1 a week, so. It wasn't
for the binge generation, as it were.
It needs to be cherished and appreciated and a bit of space afforded to it, I think. Going back to TV shows and modern TV shows and what we've watched recently, I wasn't a Game of Thrones fan at all, even slightly. And then before the last season, Emma was like, well, I'm watching it, so you're going to have to catch up. And we had 8 months to kind of romp through it, and no pun intended because of the sex and everything else, but raced through it, got all the way through it. I was a big fan, got to the end, and I don't normally like fantasy either. That's worth mentioning as well. I'm not a massive fantasy fan, so why am I in a Doctor Who podcast? I have no idea. But got to the final season on Sky, where it was being broadcast live in the last couple of years. And like everyone else, just went, well, that's all right, whatever, it's not that good. After ploughing all that time into watching it. But yeah, there you go.
But you binged it. And I feel it's funny because I feel like I'm binging Doctor Who in a way. I am, because no one would choose to do this to themselves. Actually, that's a lie. Sorry, I'm going to retract that because people do. Good to them. But they're fans. No one would keep going through how many seasons is there in Classic Who?
Well, there's 26 seasons in Classic.
Seasons. Ugh. I feel like I'm binging.
Well, yeah, I mean, fans do, you do your marathon sometimes. You don't just sort of endlessly go on, or then you choose your favourite stories.
But it's interesting because whenever we talk about you watching the episodes, this is the first time you're really doing it in order, isn't it?
Well, I've done it a few times. With some of the missing ones, I'm filling in the gaps as we go along.
That's what I mean. You've never done it in this way before. You go back to episodes that you enjoy. I do it now with shows that I like. Oh, I really like that episode. I'll watch that episode, and I enjoyed that one. You don't do everything, even the ones you don't enjoy, even the hard ones. So in a way, I feel like I'm binging Doctor Who.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah.
I'm hashtag it new gen in it. I don't know. I'm going to make that a thing. I'll make that a thing.
Well, should we go into the story then?
Yeah.
Right. Let's get into the Ice Warriors. So I'll just say about my experience of this story. So I first watched this when I got the VHS box set, which I'm holding up here, in 1998 for Christmas. So back then, you didn't have the animation back then. So episodes 2 and 3 were a condensed sort of 20-minute version with audio and photos. And then you've got the remaining... and then you've got a CD as well. It came with a CD of the soundtrack of the episodes and a little booklet as well. So I remember watching that at Christmas, 1998. And I thought fan opinion of this story was quite high. Well, all the fans I've spoke to are like, it's not as good as people think. And so there was a fan poll in 2013 for the 50th anniversary. So all of the classic and new stories up to that point were rated. And this came 141 out of 241, which I'm really surprised at, because I thought it was much more well regarded than it is.
I think, though, I mean, you don't know this well, but the previous episode was also cold.
Yes, yes.
We were in Tibet the last episode, and Jamie, the last thing he says is, "Can we go somewhere warmer?" And then they end up doing the Ice Warriors. So I feel
but the Ice Warriors as monsters are very well regarded. I think they're a classic monster, but maybe just the storyline of this. I'm really surprised actually.
I'm very conscious. So staying true to the podcast and the theme of the podcast, and because obviously you're going to be watching this, and then you watch it, and all of a sudden I knew before. I was like, I'm not going to do any research. I'm not going to, risk being biased or anything. So the only thing I've done afterwards is obviously on Twitter said I've done this and I've watched this, and then I've seen a couple of hashtags and I've seen that there is, like you say, Mark, there is a online. It appears that there's this particular set of stories has a big cult following and is a firm fan favourite and all the rest of it. So it's really interesting when you're saying, but actually, where does it actually stand in the favourite order or, favouritism of fans of what they're going with? So yeah, no, that's really interesting, because if you asked me plainly, I thought this is classic Who, and this is I don't want to be dissing on or getting beef with the big Who fans, because I'm a bit like, okay, they're not, but we'll get onto that. I'm not revealing anything yet.
Well, 6 episodes, we do find that those longer stories do have quite a bit of padding in them, and they do tend to slow down. Your traditional story is more 4 episodes.
That is interesting to say, because that was one thing I thought, well, what am I going to say about this? And, how am I going to say? And that is it. My not opening gambit, but certainly my conclusion would have been, you could have done it in 4. But that's the benefit of I suppose, contemporary hindsight, isn't it? And knowing what we know about TV shows now and different pacing and different styles. And then I think this as well goes to how you've obviously watched it in 2 sets of 3, and I've done it as 3 lots of 2, is you might, if you're of an age now, if you're 50, 60 and remember watching it on TV, and I suppose this goes for a lot of the classic episodes and story formats, is you do remember it a little bit differently as a 7, 8 year old, and you can kind of think, oh, it's Saturday night, I'm going to get there to Doctor Who, and you kind of forget about the pacing a little bit because it's a bite-sized chunk of a story, and it's only when you're doing what we do and you kind of binge it or you watch it in fast flow that you go, oh, hang on a minute, yeah, this is a bit disjointed, or that could do with streamlining there, or so. Yeah, it's interesting.
What would you say is your overall impression of this episode? Just like before we get into it, what would your overall impression of it be?
Of his story, sorry.
I can see why it's iconic. I can really see why it's iconic. And, not just the sets and some of the costumes are just brilliant, aren't they? They were like so 60s, and the stripes on the jumpers, the turn, it's so. This is what the modern age is going to look like. We've not been there yet. We don't know anything. We're just going to do it like this. So yeah, I think the stills of the ice, the title, that is so striking. You could put that on an album cover now for a contemporary indie band, and that would be the coolest thing ever. You know what I mean? The number, and it's so stark. Some of the dialogue I knew the dialogue was going to be a bit, speaking the Queens, and that's to be expected, and especially with it being Big Bad Pat and his stage background and well-respected actor and all the rest of it.
Were you expecting Jamie to be Scottish? Were you expecting a Scottish accent in there?
Didn't know anything about the companions at all. Didn't know anything about that. And this goes on as well. So obviously, bearing in mind you've obviously seen the prior episode, and you've mentioned the joke about I want to go somewhere hot. This episode you don't even see inside the TARDIS. They just arrive. You are plonked straight on the edge of a glacier, and you're kind of like, where are we? Is it? Oh, it's snowing. We're on a mountain. Oh, it's a glacier. And then they start flowing with more conversation about the computers and reactors and ionizers. And you are thrown in. There is no. One thing that you can really appreciate is either that the audiences were smarter in the 60s or used to the type of language being used. Because I think if you put it on TV now, it would lose quite a few people. They don't repeat the classic story technique of having 2 or 3 characters repeat the same line back and foreshadowing like that and kind of mapping out the story. There's none of that in this. It is just... No. And I think you've got to be really on it to see it Saturday night.
Well, let's start off. So with part 1, you go straight into that control room setting. And it's very sci-fi, and I was aware that you said you weren't into sci-fi, and I thought, what are you going to think of this first scene? Going straight in there, you got, like you say, with the fashion, you got the plastic headgear, Miss Garrett.
Glasses.
Why has the ionizer been allowed to deteriorate to danger level?
There was a pulse stoppage. I've done all I can to boost it.
It can't be allowed to fall any lower.
You still have time to evacuate?
We will certainly not evacuate. We've beaten its tantrums before.
It's falling again.
Well, hold it, you must hold it steady.
I can't.
So, and it's all very chaotic at the beginning. There's some kind of emergency. You've got the computer. Yeah, and then you meet Leader Clent. There's a lot of information there.
I'm reluctant to say confused because that seems like a negative. And I'm also reluctant to say hectic, but it is. You are dropped right in there. And I mean, of course, you're not if you were familiar with the series and watching it at the time.
No, but you are.
I was about to say, imagine like the younger kids watching at the time, the sort of 7, 8 year olds. You're not going to know what's going on. It's
interesting because they have different story writers. So who did this one? You told me this.
Oh, so this one was by Brian Hales, and he actually wrote one of the ones that we really didn't like a few seasons ago.
Well, you really didn't like. I didn't think it was as bad, but you hated it. it's interesting. Sometimes it can be really slow. It can be a really slow, like, you're like, oh God, they're just investigating for like 10 minutes, like, oh, what's this? Oh, snow. Oh, and then sometimes it's just like, bam, right in there, and this is what's happening, and you just got to run with it. So it's always so different. But it just depends on the writer.
But it's a good opening. You've got a sense of urgency, and you find out about the glaciers. They do slow down towards the end of the first episode, and Clint explains it to them. So you're just sort of in that moment. You're just finding out where we are. I don't think they mention a year, actually, or exactly where they are.
When I've gone and looked at it, it says about, the far future and a new ice age and all the rest of it. And you're like, well, that isn't actually expressively stated, really. They're just kind of catapulted into this scenario, and then they're climbing out the TARDIS. And
I have issue with them climbing out of the TARDIS. Like, I said this to you. So the TARDIS is like is a thing in itself. Therefore, surely they could just walk out and then fall. They shouldn't need to climb out of... I said that they were doing it for ages. I was like, they don't need to climb out the TARDIS, because actually the TARDIS is like a world within itself. In theory, they could just be stood up. Why are they tilted? Why is like the TARDIS tilting them?
It's a funny sort of comedy opening for the three of them, isn't it?
They were treating it almost like a hot air balloon basket that's lobsided, weren't they? And they kind of got it out, and it was like, okay, fair enough. Right, move on.
Yeah, it was a really long start, and I was like, doesn't need to be like that. That's not how the TARDIS works.
So, Will, Jamie and Victoria, do you have any questions about them? Like, do you wonder like where they're from, or?
A little bit. I suppose I just accepted it because I knew about the concept of companions, being there. And I know that through kind of some of the promo stuff, Billy Piper has done it, and there's always been, a couple of, who else is it? Comedian Tate.
Oh, Catherine Tate.
Yeah.
No. And so there being a male one, no, not really. Didn't really throw me. I love the fact they put him in a kilt.
So you might not be aware. So they picked up Jamie in 1746 at the Battle of Culloden.
Awesome! Wow, brilliant.
So it's quite unusual. We've got and Victoria is from the Victorian times. I don't know if you picked that up. So it's unusual that we've got two historical characters.
So
at the moment.
Victoria's quite new. Before that, we had Ben and Polly, and they were from the 60s. And then they picked up Jamie in Scotland, in whatever decade it was. He just came along for that. So for ages, it's really interesting because Jamie, everything was a beastie. So he was like, oh, those flying beasties. And they were aeroplanes and everything, like, because he was of his time. So he's a bit further ahead. Victoria, her dad... Oh, she'd basically been captured by Daleks. Her dad had, like, somehow... I can't remember. What had he done? Like,
sort of made a time machine by accident.
Yeah, he made an accidental time machine and got in touch with the Daleks. As you do. Yeah. So she was from the Victorian era, but actually had experience of things.
She really fits the in terms of constructs, in terms of characters, the Doctor is often, obviously, he comes in as the magical helper, and I know that that's the role that he is. He's the adventurer, the hero of the story. He's the magical helper who's in situations. I'm aware of who to know that's what he kind of is, and that's how he interacts with these things. And then the companion is essentially the audience to some degree, because they're seeing things new. They're often either a little bit naive or have things to learn, have to trust explicitly in the Doctor's superior knowledge of all things amazingly alien and technical and how quick his head is and all the rest of it. But then she, in case of Victoria, for want of a better term in 2021, she's also the bit of skirt, isn't she?
Well,
that is your classic Doctor Who girl from the 60s. She's that screamer and that,
Yeah, I mean, Polly was worse, but
You know, that's There you go.
because Jamie says something, doesn't he? This is sorry, I've jumped ahead. This is what happens, but just on that. So there was a thing where Jamie mentions the outfits that the other people in the house are wearing and he was like, do you want to wear something like that? And she's like, no, I don't wear, and that is the first time that I've noticed that they that the companions have discussed in that way.
Victoria,
What?
do you see how those lassies were dressed?
Yes, I did, and trust you to think of something like that.
Well, I couldn't help thinking about it.
Well, I think it's disgusting, wearing that kind of thing.
Oh, so it is. So it is. You don't see yourself dressed like that, then?
Jamie!
That feels like a very modern moment.
It felt
we
very
don't usually
modern.
get that.
That's the first time I'd ever seen that happen, that I was aware of.
Is that the first time there's any kind of, I mean, obviously, the companions in their relationship, that because it's almost sexualizing. That's almost getting
And
on.
that never
Would you like
happens.
that?
Yeah.
We've not had that before. That's why you were so shocked by it.
I was so shocked because we've never had it. Polly would wear she was a proper 60s, tiny mini skirts, Lulu hair, that sort of thing, we never discussed what she wore, in terms of in a sexualized manner. It was so odd that happened.
It was quite nice as a little character moment, though. We don't, in classic Doctor Who, always gets the criticism that you don't have that character development or that sort of through that arc for the characters through stories like you do in the modern series. But it is there.
Also,
in moments like that.
Or even though Victoria is just very, she is the girl, she's at this point, so it's worth saying, Mark's told me he's not a fan. You sort of you're not a Victoria fan.
She's a bit whiny and screamy and moany for me.
Mark. But is she still there? But you were surprised you were still liking her.
In this watch through, I can see, even in this one as well, actually, she's away from the Doctor and Jamie quite a lot and with the Ice Warriors. And she doesn't cope amazingly well. But it could have been worse, let's say.
How would you cope with the Ice Warriors, Mark?
Well, I don't think she's too bad.
I wouldn't drop the bracelet thing and have to go back. Oh, yeah.
There was one point where I said to Mark, I was like, that's why you run away. He was really busy doing something and she was just up there. And I was like, that's the point where you run away.
It's a classic trope, though, isn't it? Characters you love doing decisions or making decisions that you hate. And it's how many times do you see that and you go, don't go into that room. Just no.
Yeah.
Walk away. Don't do it. Oh.
There's been quite a few of recent ones, not this one, but definitely recent ones, where it's been so obvious the person is just to their left or right behind them, this massive monster, and they're completely oblivious, and you're like, how are you missing that?
I think that's because they're in such a small studio and it's done sort of like a play that you have to, the actor just has to pretend they can't see that.
The set on this I thought was amazing. Considering that, it's just a small studio.
Well, so you've got the studio stuff, and then with all the ice, and when they're out in the glacier and Victoria and the Ice Warrior, that would have been done on film somewhere else, and all the studio stuff would have been done sort of as live on a Friday night, and then they would put in the film inserts later on. So the stuff on film looks amazing, all that snow stuff.
The set for such a small studio, how they managed to make it seem bigger. They obviously managed to play with it in certain angles that made it seem a much bigger set than what it must have been.
Yeah, so the computer room, right, they very nearly got a whole 240-degree set with, it was only a very fine point where they didn't turn out it was that. And yeah, obviously the corridor scenes are all from one angle. That's it. There's never, and I mean, even now, you look at you look at some shows that they tend to film. I'm thinking Kitchen in Coronation Street or EastEnders. They tend to stand on one side. You know, think of the Queen Vic. They tend to stand on one side of it to film it because the other side's obviously, you know, where the crew are and all the rest of it. But yeah, to see that episode of Doctor Who where just that corridor, that is what they see from that angle, and that's all they're going to do. They can't reverse it or anything else.
No.
That was quite intriguing for me, actually, watching back. Oh, of course, yeah, no.
Well, speaking about the setting, this is something that confused me when I watched it as a child, where you've got that computer room, but then you've got the sort of modern or Victorian sort of lampshades in the background, and then you have this sort of Victorian house. And there's a one line of dialogue that explains it a bit later on that it's what's left of whatever the civilization. I was so confused by you've got by that, but it's easier to build a Victorian house than a space thing on the budget they've got probably.
I reckon it was I 100% reckon that was a budget thing. There's so many times it is one of those things once you've watched a few, we're like, pretty sure that jungle was like 3 episodes ago as well.
But then it adds a layer to the story and the world that you're in, actually. And I've never noticed like that before with that line. Oh, actually, yeah, that does make sense. And we're far in the future and this is all that's left. And you've got the old plant museum. Just lines like that just add to the world.
So yeah, two things I was going to say. One is, while we're on the set, I don't think they made enough of the other room. You know, where the Ice Warrior melted, and when they brought him in, that seems like that was great. Which, you know, Jamie's knocked out and shot and let out.
That was the one with the vibro chair, wasn't it?
Clint's vibro chair. He's got to get on that vibro chair.
And it just seems to have gone, woof, you know, straight away. That you don't go back into that room after the main part of the episode. Even I think you see it a little bit in the animated episode 2, and then not really again, if my memory serves me right.
But that might have been just in terms of production, which again is quite amazing at the time. They probably had that set. Well, they'd have to build the sets every week. So depending, was the other place that Penley was in maybe built the week after and took the studio space of that room or something like that. It's things like that when you sort of look into it. It's like it's probably some reason. It
was probably a plant museum instead that week.
Can we talk about Penley and Storr?
Yeah, well, let's go into it. Yeah, okay. Because they you see them running out in the first episode. You're like, who are these?
Yeah.
Who are these people?
Penley is
Peter Sallis, Wallace.
Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah, right. So this is what I was going to say is instantly it's right, Peter Sallis, you know, Last of Summer Wine, Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah.
Obviously, actors have lives before they get well known in terms of other things, and you know, there's a lot of actors that appeared in different TV shows at different points. And the Storr, Angus, Lenny, growing up, I was a massive fan of The Great Escape. So when he popped up, and I was like, "Oh, Great Escape film." that was that for me. But going back to Penley and Storr,
which sounds like a great duo, like Starsky and Husk, Penley and Storr.
I don't think it was explained particularly clearly or enough. Really, it was kind of throwaway that they, you know, had the knowledge and were once on the base, and it wasn't until later that you kind of got the Penley side. I
think Clint mentions in that first scene something like, "Oh, we don't have our scientist," or he's got. Yeah, you don't really get it. And then I was thinking, do they live in that abandoned place there? Is that where they? How long have they been there? Where is everybody else in this world? Where is it in? Is this an isolated place, or is this the whole Earth? You don't really get a sense of.
The only thing I can answer one of those questions, Mark, and that is they've been there long enough to grow some fantastic facial hair. You know, the costume department were working overtime on them, weren't they? It's some good beard going on.
In Mark's put a note of something I said in part 2, the animated one. Storr, when he injured his wrist and they bandaged it, he had a tiny little wrist after that, and I found that hilarious. And
I don't know why you just said, "Oh, he's got a small wrist."
He had a really, he had a really small wrist compared to the rest of him. And I think it's because he's wearing like a big coat or something.
I might have to go and watch the animated episode again just to check that.
You'll see it, like tiny wrist.
Well, should we go back? I'll go back to the sort of order of notes. So, Dr. Jamie and Victoria land. We've done that bit. Then you've got Arden digging up the warrior in the ice.
Is it a man? Perhaps it's an animal. We'll soon find out. Davis, the heavy drill. Yes, sir.
Base calling, sir. What do they want? There's nothing coming through. Poor reception.
I suppose they'll have to wait. This is more important. Come on, Davis.
Well, what are we going to do, sir?
Do? Excavate. This could be a brilliant discovery.
But, sir, the computerized schedule. We must stick to that.
Oh, must we?
My favourite line from Arden was, "Oh, not another mastodon," or something like that. So, which again gives you a clue to this world. We find out more about the glacier and Clent saying that there wasn't a spring. And it's very forward thinking, thinking of global warming and the concept of this for a BBC kids show in the 60s. I think that is what Doctor Who does really well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you going to get hate mail for saying it's a kids show in the 60s?
Well, I mean...
Well, no, but in theory it was.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's... when you think about it, the ideas behind it are quite, science-based. And were you surprised at that, or were you expecting it more to be a bit more of an adventure?
Mark, I 100% agree. I think you're quite right, and especially the environmental element of it, considering, yes, 100%. And it is very forward-thinking from the 60s, and interesting. Why would you take the story in that direction, really? You have a concept for it and you write up the rest of it. I think some of the language around it, this is where I was kind of like, how many people have ionizers in their homes? Even though it is a gadget you can have, and they exist. Some of that was, I'm reluctant to say woody, but it is a little bit wooden and woody around it.
I found this the hardest to keep track of for language by far.
I'm not going to say that I followed it all the way through, but I got the basics.
Yeah, that was even I could follow it, and I was quite happy to just kind of take it and go back in modern present day. We went to the cinema and saw Tenet and came away, and I was like, brilliant, amazing, loved it, thought it was awesome. And I went in with a completely open mind of just going, I'm just going to sit with it, I'm going to go with it and go with it. And then when I saw reviews and what other people were saying, and like, oh, there's no dialogue and I can't read it and I can't understand it, I was like, well, I think you kind of missed the point, because in that film, right at the beginning, a character says, feel it, just kind of go with it, feel it. And that's kind of how I approached this as well, was I knew that some of the language might be a bit hammy, because it is the 60s, it's classic Doctor Who, it's not always going to be scientifically accurate per se when they go on about, analog and digital terms and computers in it. Amazing. Have you seen that episode of Mad Men when they get the computer in the ad agency and they're like, wow, it's going to, take their lives. And yet in 67, you've got them doing this with we've got to ask the computer for the right answer for progress and to see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Could you understand what the computer was saying? Because we had problems.
Oh, no. God. No.
And yet the computer decided everything for them.
Yeah, I'll be like, hang on a second, what did it say? Does anyone know? Can I have a printout of that?
Yeah, we were like, I was like shutting my eyes, like whenever it was talking, like really trying to understand what it was saying. I was like, this is one of my big like overall Doctor Who grievances, when they try and do like fancy voices, like tech voices or whatever, and they like slow it down to a point where I've almost forgotten what was said before because it's gone that slow and it's trying to be that cool and quirky. So I'm still trying to, okay, I've got that word. Right, okay, I forgot what was just said before because it's just trying to be too cool.
It's an interesting, so having watched it, I completely have a new appreciation of paper mache and cardboard. You know, the things you can achieve. The things you can achieve. It makes Blue Peter look like amateur hour, doesn't it? You know?
It does, yeah.
I think, Sarah, you said it was like the computer was like a bin that they
Yeah,
just...
they're like a cool dustbin.
It literally just looks like someone has upturned, you know, some kind of garden bench and put mash on it, you know. But that's what's amazing. Of course, going back, I'm a big fan of the BBC Radiophonic Workshop, because being a musician and being in bands and stuff, they've kind of come on my radar, and I knew, you know, Delia Derbyshire and that kind of thing, and the theme tune, and it's so iconic, it's brilliant. You just can't beat it. But of course, into voice editing, what you're talking about, Sarah, you know, aside from talking down a set of tubes or different other things, or mimicking and putting on a stupid voice in front of a microphone, vocoders and synthesizers and that kind of, were in the infancy, weren't they? So being able to do, you know, quick editing on voice and audio was probably just not an option.
No.
But you got to understand what they're saying. Surely they were like, hang on, we need to turn this down a little bit, or maybe just not.
Or, I mean, the other thing we've got to bear in mind is that we're going off recordings. All like, oh no, wait, we're not. These are the episodes.
These are
aren't
the
they?
episodes, yeah.
I'm going to say the animated ones, we are going off recordings. So, you know, you can allow that a little bit for them.
You didn't like the Ice Warrior. While we're talking about voices.
Yeah, I hate the
Ice Warrior voices we found hard as well.
Oh, they annoyed me so much.
That cannot be true.
Were the others with you?
Yes. Our spaceship crashed at the foot of the ice mountain. As we came out to investigate, a great avalanche of snow buried us.
Did you think? I'm very. No, I'm not going to be careful. I'm going to say it. And if anyone has a problem with it, they can message you. Did you find the Ice Warrior voice a little bit weak?
Yes, and annoying, and
I didn't. I asked the question, but no, I agree with you completely.
There
was too much background hissing. I know they're trying to make them alien, but it was just
nothing.
So difficult. And I had to look up, actually. So it was the actors that were in the Ice Warrior costumes. They pre-recorded their voices and were miming along to their own.
So you'd think they'd be able to move their mouths in sync with what they've already said, but apparently
But then they've
not.
got this latex that goes into their mouth across, and they just can't even open their mouths. And it's just, I mean, the design of the Ice Warriors, it's an iconic Doctor Who monster.
Look, a voice, though.
But it just doesn't...
Any voice, it needs like a substance to it of some sort. So there's a difference between this and the difference between like something. Do you know what I mean? That's a very minimal difference, but it needs like a crunch to it, a core. And they had nothing. They were talking with that in between, and I was like, and then sometimes you get that music over the top, and I was like, I haven't got a clue what's going on. Like, what was it? What was the machine called?
Oh, I can't remember, because the opening, you know,
I can't remember it. I can't remember. It was like, what was it? I'm gonna have to look that up.
The thing where you hold your hand and the sound goes, ooh.
Yeah,
like one of those.
A theremin.
Yes. So
I always thought that was someone singing.
And I was like, oh, that's that unusual instrument. Mark was like, no, it's not. I was like, yeah, it is. And then I played him
but I think it is one of those things.
Somewhere Over the Rainbow on YouTube on a theremin. And he was like, that's it. So yeah, it's definitely...
I don't know. I haven't actually looked up exactly if it was someone singing or not. But no, it probably was one of those machines.
I think it was a theremin.
So yeah, when you've got that going on and the Ice Warriors talking, yeah.
Yeah, it was just... There's no... And you couldn't even really distinguish between them because it's just whisper. It was really weak.
Yeah, so that wasn't... obviously, they dug one out, took it back, it defrosted. It came to life. You know, got to watch out for those fish fingers, haven't you? You know, it's... I really like that. I thought that as a concept was hilarious, personally.
Yeah.
And the fact that then, credit where credit's due, while we're talking about all the episodes, and I know we're on that, I suppose, one really good component of all the episodes, apart from obviously the last one, they all have superb cliffhanger endings.
Yes, they did.
And
they had really good cliffhangers.
I don't know how that compares to other stories in the series, but they watching the Ice Warriors, it really felt like, oh my goodness, the Ice Warrior is melting. He's sat up. He's doing, he's attacking this. Oh my goodness, the Doctor is in absolute peril because he's taking himself off, to the spaceship, which really just seemed like a base or another base. And they were going to, fire the ionizer beam or whatever they are.
Yeah.
I would say 85-90% are good.
They are good, yes. And I miss that in the new series. You don't get as many. A lot of the stories, though, the structure of the story sometimes has to rely on that cliffhanger to get through. So you might hold back a bit of the story and then they put in the cliffhanger just for the sake of it. But yeah, most of the time they are good cliffhangers, aren't they?
Yeah, I'd say so. When it's a really bad one because you're like, if you're tired, you're like, yeah, let's end. I can't watch another one now. It's usually me being like, yeah, I'm done.
So, okay, well, let's go on to episode 2 then. The animation. Another new thing that we've put you through.
So, when I was 20 years ago, 20 years ago, I shouldn't have been watching it when it was on, but I was. There was a BBC comedy show that was animated on BBC Two at night, and it was kind of after Shooting Stars and when they did the comedy night on a Monday. They had Shooting Stars at 9 and then half an hour about the time we had this show, and it was a sketch show that was animated, and it's the same. I bet if we looked into it, it might be the same studio because the style is like the only difference being this was colour and obviously the Doctor Who animation was black and white to keep it in. I thought they got Patrick Troughton's hair down to a T. It was beautiful. It was amazing. And yeah, I loved the style of it. It wasn't off-putting. When you say, oh, it's animated, you kind of think, really, come on, how's this going to go? And okay, yes, the audio combined with the animation is a little jarring in places. But it shouldn't put anyone off, I think, watching one if they go, oh, it's a missing episode. And I know we spoke about this earlier, there's a charm in the missing episodes. There's a beautiful, I don't know if it's a creative energy, because it inspires you to think more on it while you're watching it or engage with it in a different way. I don't know, but there is something really lovely and innocent and beautiful about the animated episodes.
I like them. The first one I watched was
Reign of Terror,
and I didn't enjoy that one.
So there's different styles in some of the stories. They get different companies to do the different stories, so it's not always the same. So some of them are. This one was a little bit more basic than what we've had actually, but it worked, didn't it? And I suppose they've got the photos to go off as well, and they've got the existing episodes, so they know what all the, because some of them they don't know what the sets look like, and they don't know all the. They haven't got references sometimes, but at least with this, they've got the other 4 to go off.
And, there's something, like you said, there is something very charming about it. It kind of honours the way
the Doctor had a bit more of a sort of...
he had an after... He had...
He was a bit more jowly, wasn't he? A bit more...
What do you call it? After shadow? After 5 shadow, whatever. 5 o'clock shadow, that's it.
This is why I've not shaved today. And it's also, I'm going to take some scissors to this fringe because he is my new hair guru. I really appreciate the haircut. But this is interesting as well. Now, I've mentioned this really quickly because I accidentally clicked on some hashtags after watching it, so not to bias me before watching it, obviously, as we've discussed. Yeah. And I stumbled across an interview about Doctor Who, and they were saying that in a way, all the Doctors since kind of owe Patrick something, and particularly Matt Smith and David Tennant, but particularly Matt Smith was very much channeling, or took inspiration from Patrick, which is something I was completely unaware of before watching it. So there you go.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. It's quite interesting talking to someone else about this, like, for the first time.
Yeah,
it's
this
quite
is really
exciting.
interesting.
I know.
Just you both
from me. I'm saying it, not Mark. So, but they never thought this would take off the way it did Doctor Who. Like, they never thought that they'd have to recast Doctor Who, So if Patrick Troughton hadn't done a good job, there really wouldn't be more Doctor Who, because, if that had gone badly, I mean, the first Doctor was held with such godlike, and then, but it had to be. I mean, it definitely had to be. He just got so bad, and he wasn't even there half the time. It was just really bad, so he had to go. But if Patrick Troughton hadn't done a good job and paved the way to create this character that was fresh and new, yet still the Doctor, and that's a challenge. And I think it's a really... I think that is why actors today still want to play the Doctor and still find that, because how to bring something new and exciting yet still hold the values of who this character is.
His performance is awesome, and the bit that when he comes into the base at first and goes on all of it, and it gets a bit not cheesy at the time, I imagine. I mean, I'm not watching it in the 60s, I'm watching it now, but a bit hammy with his conversations with the Ice Warriors when he goes to the base and seeks them out, and I'm going to reason with them, and all of it.
Yeah.
His performance, the arguments he has with Clem are stunning, and his performance. And I mean, I know that the Clent's obviously Peter Blackford. That's his name. You should know this. I don't know.
Oh no, I don't know the actor's name. No.
He's also performing and absolutely flying with his performance, but the two of them sparring off against each other, it's like, I'm on board with that, and the Doctor is completely believable. Well,
let's talk about Clent, because he always got on my nerves whenever I used to watch this. He really annoyed me. He's so frustrating, and he's got his character limp as well.
Which I swear changes per leg, per scene. Like, he grows on me. The first scene, I was like...
Oh, he's just too shouty for me in some scenes. He's just so annoying. He's just...
But he does grow on me.
But there's nothing likeable about him. He's very stubborn, and he's very pedantic, and he won't see away from the computer.
And he's very
but he's having all these
arrogant.
serious conversations.
He's very arrogant.
He's being this leader in this onesie so that he's got to stand in. I mean, I wonder what the actor thought. I don't know. Having these, they're great arguments. I agree. But he's there in this.
Even him, agreeing for the Doctor to help him. That whole scene is arrogant. Like, he's just an arrogant character. You're right, there is nothing to like about him. And once, things start going a bit wrong for him, I guess, I started to like him more. Because you start to see the vulnerability of a character. But,
I mean, Miss Garrett puts up with a lot.
Oh, she does. She does. And while we're talking about haircuts, wow, what a haircut. She does. And I mean, one thing I'm very conscious of or what I kind of thought going into it, was looking into, is there going to be anything sexist? Is it going to come out from a different time? I know we spoke about Victoria being, the bit of skirt, but that's kind of like the character trope of the time. I was kind of, what dialogue is going to, is there going to be a dismissive, what do you know, woman? Or how is that going to sit? And there wasn't really.
There's not.
No, we haven't. We don't get that very much, no.
You do sometimes get it, but it's more with the companions you get that than the other characters, I find.
Yeah, in that terms, actually, the 60s Doctor Who, you don't
In
get...
fact, what surprised me the most watching it was I was expecting that so much of it being the 60s, and particularly the first season, the women are very... Okay, we completely disregard Susan, but the women generally are really strong characters. And it was a female producer, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And the women are just... They're not like overpowering the men, but they're on the same level as the men.
Yeah, there's equality there. There's a respect and equal.
And even going back to other episodes, I'm just the one where Doctor gets Doctor from first to second Doctor. What's that one called?
10th Planet.
10th Planet. That one, the cast itself was very... It was set on an international space station, and it's international in its cast. They have different nationalities there and different colours. And the captain of the ship is Jamaican, and I've forgotten what the other guy, but there's just two, and they said they wanted that. They wanted this sort of idea that you could see a black man in space. They said that in the thing. Now, this is the 60s, and it's Doctor Who. That's, like, amazing.
I almost feel bad discrediting something. Like, they're never going to be forward-thinking. They're going to be full of, homophobia and sexism and all the rest of it. But no, they're not. It sounds, obviously, you're watching more than me, and in this episode, there was no... instances that I could see as being sexy, apart from Jamie saying to Victoria, "Would you?"
Yeah, which was
that's
the most
only
random
moment.
thing.
Yeah, he's never been like that before.
Said that before, and there's not even Ben and Polly had anything like that.
No,
and Ben and Polly had a whole sex thing going on in the. I don't know. I'm like Ben. Ben fancied Polly, didn't they? And Polly knew it.
Well, yeah, but it wasn't said in the actual
No, exactly.
stories.
It's not
That's
said, but it's there. Nothing.
I really like Miss Garrett. I thought she was a really good, strong character. Obviously, she's in a short skirt, in the
cold.
In the cold, they're all. Yeah, it must be the central heating in that place must be up full.
It's the bills, but that must partly be, because of the time. It's a very, I know I've mentioned Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet and Stingray. The 60s idea of the future is a thing of beauty in itself, isn't it? When we have it now in certain ways, I suppose, in some TV shows, how we picture the future, but it's, that modernism, or the idea of what is modern. It's the future. Brilliant.
The thing with Miss Garrett, though, she went off a little bit towards the end of the story, because you've got Clint relying on the computer a lot. Miss Garrett was as well, and then something happened, didn't it? What happened she went more computer. She was going away from the computer stuff because she goes to see Penley and gets a bit more information. And we thought she was going to be a bit more... Rounded. And then she goes right back to relying on the computer towards the end.
Yeah, she's like, the computer decides all. And it's like, oh, get over it.
Yeah, she was a little bit disappointing there. I thought she could have changed across the story, but she doesn't.
He doesn't know the computer's command to wait. We can threaten to destroy the glacier and his ship with it.
Yes, possibly.
Well, why can't we do it, sir? It's our only chance for survival.
Waters, you know the computer's decision and its reasons.
I know all about that, but it doesn't exactly give much thought to us, does it?
The computer thinks of everything, considers all the facts.
And it's supposed to come up with all the answers, isn't it?
I'm just going to move ahead, part 3.
Okay. Oh, yeah, so Jane Garrett, she's called Jane, goes to Penley for help, we've said that. Jamie and Arden shot by the Ice Warriors.
I know, a death.
And we have to talk about, because we had a conversation about Jamie's outfit, because they have those plastic things that they wear out, and we were like, he's still wearing his kilt. How can he get in that while he's still wearing his kilt the whole time?
I know.
So that was our clothes watch moment that we comment on. I really liked, the highlight for the story for me was Victoria's chase from the Ice Warrior. On film, I thought that looked amazing. And she screams and sort of causes the avalanche.
Of course.
It's a classic Doctor Who monster moment, I think.
But I really liked the deaths, actually, because I genuinely thought that Jamie was, like, if I'd have been watching this, I genuinely, as a kid, I would have been like, Jamie is dead. And there was a moment where I was like, how is Jamie? Like, he looks dead. And you kind of know he's not going to die because he's a companion.
You know he's not. Of course the other one dies, and then Jamie miraculously doesn't.
Just
they
ends up
get
paralysed.
shot by the same gun, but
it's quite a dramatic moment because the doctors, a lot of time, he feels very helpless, I think, in a lot of this. You know, he's lost Victoria. Suddenly, where's Jamie? And, like, they can't contact them. And, you know, it's a very vulnerable
Well, they're all split
thing.
up, and I think usually they are in a 6-parter because then you can... You've got all your different parts of your story. Yeah, a lot of the time they don't stay together very much after part 1. They all go off and have their own moments. And Jamie is not used as much. You've got Clint and Miss Garrett and Storr and Penley. Sometimes with the companions they do get sidelines a little bit, so I think that's why he gets shot, and he's he can't walk for a couple of episodes just to get him out there. Although there was a real bear, they did actually film a real bear. That is not stock footage.
Of course they do.
Usually in these they do use some stock footage of something where there's like a lion or something and it's from London Zoo or something like that. But reading up on this, they actually got a bear in on and filmed it.
I hope they pay them, you know, give a fair wage.
So then where are we?
Well, going to part 4, I guess.
I was about to say that part 3 was... Part 1 was quite breezy. I know we spoke about how hectic it was you're thrown in there. Part 2 being the animated, and part 3 as well. Part 3, you talk about real iconic scene. For me, it was the most filler episode.
Other than, like, them being shot, which is right at the end, I found between 3 and 4, there's a lot of just talk.
Because actually, the basics, you have the sort of world building at the beginning, but the basis of the story is the Ice Warriors are there. They can't use the ionizer. We need to get rid of the Ice Warriors. You could do it in, half the episodes, can't you? In terms of what actually happens, there is a lot of padding.
Though, that I was getting confused because I was like, hang on, can they use the ionizer? But they're telling the Ice Warriors they can't. And then it was, so the Ice Warriors, do they know something else? Like, I can't tell because I can't even tell what they're saying half the time.
I found the padding was the computer talk. They seem to have the same argument about the computer about 3 times in that. Can we trust the computer? No, it's saying this. It's saying this. That was the repetitive stuff for me.
I just found that all a bit confused and a bit like, why are we having this conversation? Almost like it was a, no offense to the writer, just trying to find a way out of and then we go and we can jump off that carousel, you know, and move on with the story. But
like, genuinely, like, I'm jumping ahead, but hey ho. When the doctor sends them back down and he's like, you'll find your things down there, I genuinely was like, will they find their things down there? Is he just sending them back down to the base for like what? I couldn't tell. Like, I was so confused by the amount of conversations that had happened like, by this point about different things. Don't get me wrong, I followed the story and I got like the general gist. It didn't really matter. They were going to go back there and there was going to be a thing. But I was kind of like, do they want to be going back there?
Well, the Ice Warriors going back to the base at the end. Is the Doctor
setting the Ice Warriors up? Or is the Doctor setting them up at the base? Like, I was so confused by, like, all the different motives and things that could be happening. There was almost too much that could... Yeah, it was just like you said, it was just a lot of padding and a lot of back and forth and stuff, and I was just like, what?
Because we lose Storr, don't we? Earlier on. Poor Storr gets shot. I mean, you knew that was going to happen, I think.
Yeah. The minute that he was like, I'm going to go and reason with them, you're like, you're dead.
With your little small wrist.
Writing is on the wall. Yeah.
No, you can't reason with an alien. It's like rule 1.
Don't go there by yourself. What are you doing?
Yeah. It's
well, poor Victoria, because she's just got away, and then she meets Storr, and he's like, "Come back with me," and he's like grabbing her, and saying, "Come with me," and she's like, "No, I've just got..." And that's Victoria back on the spaceship for another episode.
Yeah, all that running for nothing.
We liked Victoria's fake crying. That was a highlight.
Oh yeah, that was funny. When the doctor was like crying, she was like, "What do you mean?"
I like that when you've got those sort of humorous moments in those situations. It's
it almost
really
plays up to the
entertaining.
fact that she cries.
Well, yeah, she does a lot. She screams a lot. Victoria is a bit.
She screams, she cries. She's like, just cry, and it's like it sort of plays up to that, I guess, in a cheesy way. It made me laugh. Why have you put Jamie's legs bare?
Oh, Jamie's legs and the bear.
Oh,
yeah.
I was like, Jamie's legs bare.
And what else? So I've put the computer stuff. Computer says wait.
Computer says no.
Yeah, and then computer says no. You've got all of that. It's wrapped up quite quickly. I say this a lot about them.
Yeah.
You have all of these 6 episodes, all this back and forth, and then right at the end, what happens? They turn up the heat, and he does the sound waves, and then that's it. It's like the writer gets a little bit bored, and it's like, oh, I've just got to wrap it all up now, and it's so quick.
Yeah, this is what I mean about the carousel. Like, well, we're going to get off it, like jump, and suddenly there's a very convenient thing. I quite liked the idea, and the going back to the set, turning the knob and watching the dials go. I thought that was brilliant. I was inspired, humidity and temperature and all that was hilarious. But then, the whole the shock waves firing through and making it all got a bit. The Trekkie set wobble, side to side, and it is wrapped up very quickly and conveniently, which is pleasing. But at the same time, you're like, oh, do I feel shortchanged by this?
Yeah,
but you've had a chat. I think for me, knowing what I know about Doctor Who coming into it, there is that conversation about the computer again. With Clint and the Doctor, and how the Doctor can second guess the computer because his head is as quick as, if not quicker than, the computer. And then it's Penley messing with the unknown, which I like. This is one thing I really like about the story, and you get it in quite a few modern. Quentin Tarantino in Glorious Bastards is the best example I can think of quickly with this, where in the theatre at the end there is the plot starts to go left and right with the Colonel taking Brad Pitt's character out of it and saying, well, I can do this and I can let you get away with it, and they're all plotting in different ways. So the Bastards are plotting, the cinema owner, she's plotting, and Penley, likewise in Doctor Who in this Ice War, is going, I can do this and manipulate this, as they're also talking about the shockwaves and disrupting the Ice Wars. And I kind of like that, how it all came together. I know that's a really roundabout way of saying well, there you go. It's the only example I can think of,
On a similar wave, I guess, in Tarantino, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Have you seen that one? And the very end, where everything that has happened for the past 3 hours comes together in 10 minutes of, like, the fact that you even learned he had a flamethrower like in his garage. Every little element comes together in that last 10 minutes of chaos. When we were just crying in the cinema.
The surprising moment in the end of this, in part 6, was that guy who... He was in part 1 helping excavate the Ice Warrior. Then he turns back up and he goes a bit mad and he has to get shot. Does Miss Garrett shoot him?
Yeah. She shoots him for like...
Suddenly happens, doesn't it?
There's a lot... It's a really random amount of stuff that happens towards the end that you're just like, what's happening? But I agree. I thought Penley, like, suddenly... taking over, and it's about like taking the risk. That's a human thing to do. These choices are human choices, and I really like.
And did
that.
you notice Victoria just disappears in the last 5 minutes or so?
Yeah,
she's like, he says something like, "I'll go and wait at the TARDIS." Victoria is not there she's gone in the control room. Jamie's better. He's standing there watching, not having anything to do. Victoria is just not in that scene at all. They were like, there's not even any point having her
No.
there. That's it. You
They're
don't
like-
see her again after the.
Maybe she's
in
had
the
like
story.
her airtime for the
It's
Go and
things
sit in
like
the
that,
TARDIS.
and the extras in the background in the control room.
I called them the backing girls. There were
'Cause they're
three
just
girls that
three
were just
there.
in the background.
But then after it's all happened and you've had all the destruction, they're just carrying on as normal as they always have been in the background on their computers.
in their
They're just-
tiny little mini skirts. Honestly, they're like 60s backing singers. Ooh.
and it's just, and Clint's happy, and it's all just very. Oh, we've dealt with that now.
No mention of what state the glass is in outside. And
No.
New Ice Age, and how it's melting. So because they do make references throughout about how quick the ice is melting and how long they've got, and the computer is flying towards or veering towards disaster and crashing, and the reactor going. And
My bet, though, is if they wore more clothes, then they probably wouldn't need to have the heating on as high, and that might help
Yeah.
them.
Well, I didn't understand the. We had all these close-ups of this sort of perspex showing
Yeah.
us the map. I don't know if we were actually supposed to see anything or
No.
take anything away from that. Well, someone needs to tell World Control, don't
There's
they?
a line that I made
going on?
Mark write down, which was "Spit your stupid liberty in my face," and I enjoyed that line. That was from Garrett, I think. Oh no!
Was it? I think it might have been
Clint.
Clint.
I think it was,
a Clinton Penley moment. I think.
Clinton Penley goes, "Spit your stupid liberty in my face," and I just found that hilarious. There's some really odd, it was good. There's some really nice moments, some good things, but it could have been 4.
it could have been 4. And at the end of the day, you're still going to get a lot out of it if you remember it from when you watched it yourself. I mean, I would say people, go and watch it. It's if you're interested in Doctor Who or you've never seen it, like I've never seen it, go and watch it and find out. The person I spoke to about before doing this was my stepdad, and he clearly remembers hiding behind the sofa as a kid. And when I said the Ice Warriors, he was like, "Oh my, I remember the Ice Warriors! Oh wow!" And he got really excited about it. And then when I watched it, it was like, "What do you think of it?" And I told him really what I thought of it, and he's like, "I'm not surprised because you've got to remember that it's corrugated cardboard and paper mache, and you kind of watch it as a 7-8-year-old would watch it and get immersed in it and see it and all the rest of it." I think if you are that person who is now 50s, 60s, go and watch it. I do. I will.
Yeah.
You do. If you've got access to BritBox, or you can get it online and stream it, or
And the animated. I mean, what's interesting, this one maybe not as much, but some of the other animated ones, because it's animated, they can do just that little bit more. So there was one where they were creating the Daleks, and there was literally a room of Daleks.
Well, even in
and
this,
stuff.
you have that extra sort of artistic license, like when they're in the second episode where they're sitting around the table. It's a shot from above down, and they wouldn't have done that in the studio, I don't think. There's certain shots and angles that they can do in the animation, which just adds a little bit to it, I think.
The animation, what really came across well. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was amazed at the quality of the picture of the film. I was blown away by the quality of the picture, because I don't think it'd be a bit more grainy and all the rest of it. But the fur on the Ice Warriors is because you see them in the latex on the film, and you're like, they don't look that hairy, but then they've really gone to town on the animation. That it looks, you know what I mean? You're like, okay, right, yeah, fine.
Oh, those costumes though, when they're collapsing at the end, those poor actors trying to sort of bend down and get on the floor and move in those things.
They're not the worst
you
costume.
can't blame them. You can't blame them. It's not the worst we've seen.
Look, it's just the mouth, I think, that's the worst part of that
The
costume.
mouth, and then everything sort of fiberglass with this sort of suit underneath. I mean, it's such a great design.
Yeah.
You can't take anything. It's just that you know what it's like when you see Mr. Blobby kneeling down, and you've got that fall, and you see the knees creasing, and you're like, yeah, it's a man in a suit, you know.
Yeah.
Great couple of episodes. I'm thankful for having seen it. I can see its influence. Not, like keep going, I've not seen Doctor Who. I can see why people talk about it.
Are you glad you've done it? It's not been a waste of time.
Oh no, not even slightly. And I think Emma was quite intrigued by it and the experience between. I would love to come back. I would love to do it.
What we will say is, if you're going to go back and watch an episode, watch from season 1, The Keys of Marinus, which is mine and Mark's favourite episode. It's First Doctor, and it's just right. We still, in fact, it's not an episode if we don't mention The Keys of Marinus.
No, yeah, we haven't mentioned it, have we?
We haven't mentioned The Keys of Marinus. I had to mention it.
So, well, we better wrap up. This glacier is on its way, so we better pack up and get out of here before.
This third bedroom masquerading as a computer room needs to go back into a third bedroom tonight. So I better go as well. Yeah.
So before we go, Will, where can people find you?
So this is what they say on the football shows now, isn't it? Don't at me. You know, if you've got me in your fantasy team, don't at me. I am on Twitter. I am at Just William Rees, and that is Rees RHYS. So at
the Welsh way,
the proper way, at Just William Rees.
Wow.
Great, cool. We just got one more thing we've got to do. So we had a competition a few weeks ago. So Sarah is going to pick a winner, and the winner gets a To Watch Who mug and a Big Finish CD starring Fraser Hines as Jamie.
Courtesy of Mark. Okay.
So, Will, you are a witness that this is a fair draw. There you go.
In the name as well.
Got it out. I can see it.
Okay, the winner is Luke Malloy.
Yay! Well done, Luke.
Malloy.
That is Luke from the Lost in Gallifrey podcast.
Oh,
so
well done, Luke.
He got all of the monsters right from Sarah's descriptions. Well done, everybody else that attempted that as well. It wasn't easy.
Apparently not. Mark wanted to do 10. I'm just going to point out. Mark wanted 10. I narrowed the field for
There we go.
everyone,
So I will get in touch with you, Luke. And just before we go as well, the next story, shall I tell you the title?
Yeah, go on.
So it's called The Enemy of the World.
Oh, so I'm feeling we're not going to be cold anymore, but I feel like, because we've had 2 in a row, and I think it's going to be in the future.
Right.
But like, when I say future, I mean like space, sci-fi-y.
Okay.
I feel like there's going to be some aliens.
Great. Okay. Well, we'll see what happens. So you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at To Watch Who. And yeah, we will see you next week for The Enemy of the World. Right. I'm going to... Yeah, we better get out of here for this glacier. And Will, I'm going to press this thing on this Apple Watch thing and give it back to Victoria. So bye, everyone.
To Watch Who.